that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and Tom Fennell. I'm George Harvey, and here is
I am Tom Fennell.
Famous Tom Fennell, man about town, philanthropist. All you have to do is look at his credits, and you'll know that for sure. We collect a bunch of energy stories from the week prior to. We don't generally collect them from the future. It's always prior to, right?
As far as I know,
Okay.
we're working on the future now, but we haven't quite got there yet.
Anyway, we collect stuff from the last week, and I think we've got a lot of stories this time around.
I'm trying to connect the Nikola Tesla by seance, you know.
Ah, yes. Tesla is the company. Elon Musk says that they're going to come up with a big announcement at the end of the month, and everybody's waiting with bated breath to find out.
They haven't let us down in the past.
No, they haven't. It could
they
be.
are the Henry Ford of the 21st century.
It could be that they're going to come up with a new car, but it could also be that they're going to start selling batteries from their big battery factory.
Well, both of these we know are coming. It's just a matter of when.
However, we should be doing the news that actually has happened, and so we look back to last Thursday, which, since we're recording on Thursday, is the 26th of March. We find this from Clean Technology Business Review. SunEdison plans to buy 1,000 vanadium flow batteries from Energy Power Systems. They will store more than 100 megawatt hours of energy at SunEdison's rural electrification and solar power mini-grid projects in India. SunEdison intends to bring reliable energy to 20 million people globally by 2020.
Well, SunEdison is a U.S.-based global energy company.
Right.
And they're up there in the top 5. Maybe they might be number 2.
I don't know, but they're way up
big
there.
Guys.
They're big. And these batteries, 1,000 batteries with 100 megawatt hours, are going to cost, I believe, about $30 million. That's a big sale for a company, Emergy, that I hadn't heard of a year ago.
I just saw some batteries up in Rutland, and they cost $6 million a piece.
Oh wow! How much energy?
I don't know. I don't remember how much
energy. You don't know the
energy.
figures?
They were in containers.
Yeah,
Each container contained, a gazillion little batteries.
Yeah.
Each container was about $6 million.
Wow. The idea of spending $300 per kilowatt hour on batteries may leave a lot of people stunned. But I went in and bought one of those little batteries for a calculator the other day. It cost $1.62.
Yeah.
And when you look at the 1.5 volt and 0.1 milliamps or whatever the thing is, I forget what it was, but I did do the calculation, and it was about $7,200 per kilowatt hour for this battery, bitty battery.
Yeah, I can understand.
So $300 a kilowatt hour. That's for the storage. That's for the bottle that the water goes into, not for the water.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Good analogy.
Yeah. So we're looking at
take a quick look at this vanadium battery.
Yeah.
It's one of many, many new designs for flow batteries.
Yes.
And I've always lamented, how come I never studied flow batteries when I was in college? And I was starting to feel old. They weren't invented yet.
Oh, I thought maybe college hadn't been invented yet.
Nice talk. But anyhow, you can see from this picture, sort of, what's going on. There's a positive electrolyte and a negative electrolyte.
Right.
And in this particular concept, they don't mix. They
Yes.
keep them separate.
Yeah.
They're going into separate compartments, and they're separated by a molecule, not a molecule. A
membrane.
A membrane
Yep.
that permits electrons to flow.
Yeah.
When they charge it, the electrons flow from what appears there to be blue,
Yeah.
the blue electrolyte, into the green electrolyte.
Right.
And when you discharge the battery, it flows the other way.
The other way. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I couldn't get it. This is animated on their website.
Ah.
So you can see all of this flow happening. And It has nothing to do with the technology. It's just a byproduct. But as this happens, the liquids actually change color.
Oh, really?
The blue becomes yellow and the green becomes pink.
Really?
So I guess if you had a sight glass on there, you could look and tell what's the state of charge of your battery.
Yeah, yeah. But these batteries can be charged and discharged. And
charging and discharging doesn't use up the battery.
Right.
And it doesn't
so
use
it's an
up
indefinite
the
number
liquid.
of times, yeah.
And the only limitation to how much they can store is how big a reservoir you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can be very large.
Yeah.
And they can be small enough to fit in a car.
Yeah. The size of the battery, not including the reservoirs, has some influence on the actual
The operation, the time involved.
the wattage that you're getting.
Yeah, the wattage you can get at any
the
moment.
storage volume that you've got tells you how long you can get that.
That's unlimited.
Yeah.
It's limited only by your ability to store the liquid.
This is really interesting stuff. You know, when they're talking about big batteries that are relatively inexpensive when it comes to the grid, and these grid batteries, you know, as the price goes down, we're at a point where cities and towns can have their batteries for backup power. And it's one of the things that will enable the microgrids.
The microgrids are going to happen because of exactly this.
Yeah.
And they're going to happen because it makes sense. You're not going to have to worry about massive, large-scale outages because you can disconnect from the grid and keep going.
Yeah. And if you have local generating, which could be from wind or solar or biomass or biodigesters or whatever.
Or even diesel.
Even diesel, absolutely. You can make your power. You can store what you don't want to use.
Yep.
And then have that as a backup or as a what you're going to get your power from overnight.
So the whole model is changing.
The whole model is changing. This is something that could be done on a home basis. The smallest of those batteries that Imergy sells are, I think, 5 kilowatts.
Okay.
And a 5 kilowatt battery would be big enough to supply a household that did its heating with an air source heat pump and it's cooking by electricity. This is a big battery for a household. Or alternatively,
Yeah, 5 kilowatts per household. That's enough for most American homes.
yeah. On the other hand, if you have a household that's heated with propane and your cooking is propane, you could probably use a battery like that for 3 of them. So on an emergency basis, certainly you could use it for 2 on a regular basis. But unfortunately, we have to go ahead and leave the flow batteries behind.
Well, it's not the last time we're going to be talking about
we're going to see
batteries,
these
'cause
guys
this
more.
is technology that you're going to be
Yeah,
hearing
this
more
is
and more
this
of.
is new technology. This is, you know, it's coming in. The flow batteries. I don't know when they were invented, but it wasn't that long ago. Yeah, it was
No,
after
it
you
was
went to
about-
college.
It was about 1960 or something like that.
Oh, that was after you went to college.
Well, I was still in college.
You were still in college. That was just before I went to college. But it's, you know, when those things come out, it takes time for people to find out about them.
Well, stuff we're even talking about now.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while before it's available to the public. So
Well, these flow batteries, I think, actually
they're not one of them.
They're kind of
new types of flow
yes,
batteries.
absolutely.
They're working
yeah.
on.
And the one thing about this particular flow battery that is interesting is that it uses vanadium, which is a very expensive metal, and it uses a vanadium ions, but it gets the vanadium from fly ash.
Yeah,
and
so
it doesn't.
it's recycling the
Yeah,
vanadium.
it's recycled vanadium.
And meanwhile, there's somebody else working on a carbon nanotube substitute for the vanadium.
There's some very interesting things happening in technology. Now we've gone through
Let's move along here.
our first item, and it took us 8 minutes. The next thing is from Renews. It says renewable electricity in the UK surged 20% to 64.4 terawatt hours in 2014 and claimed a record share of 19.2% of total generation. The latest energy statistics show offshore wind generation rose by 16.1% and onshore wind by 7.9% compared to 2013. Both of these were due to increased capacity, not to increased wind supply.
Correct.
So
For what it's worth, a terawatt is 1,000 megawatts,
And
which
a-
is 1,000 kilowatts,
Yep.
which is 1,000 watts.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot. No, megawatts are in there. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mentioned
you
megawatts.
said
Yeah,
you
I
said
said
megawatts. You get into a terawatt is 1,000 gigawatts.
1,000 gigawatts,
Which is
which
1,000 megawatts, yeah.
which is 1,000 kilowatts, which is 1,000 watts.
Yeah. Okay.
In,
So
in England, it's different.
there's an old saying that, I used to be a gunsmith, and there's an old gunsmith saying, which is, give an Englishman a piece of steel and he will do something silly with it. Okay. We move on. From Clean Technica, we have this. Oil companies continue to get burned by low oil prices, but the pain is bleeding over into the financial industry. Major banks are suffering huge losses from both directly backing some struggling oil companies, but also buying high-yield debt that is now going sour and difficult for the banks to sell on the market.
So we've been seeing this from the other side,
Yep.
from the investor side.
Yep.
And they're saying, this isn't what it used to be.
Yes, and it's not. What in the world is that graphic?
It's a bank.
It's a bank saying
no.
don't come around here. Okay, there you go. Okay, let's move on. Friday, March 27th, China. Friday was one of those great days. Friday was a great day. Friday was full of news. We have 5 items from Friday. China is reducing coal use for power generation faster than expected as the use of cleaner burning fuels and slowing economic growth drags thermal utilization rates to a potential record low. Utilization rates at thermal power plants, nearly all coal-fired, have dropped to 52.2% in the first 2 months of this year. And you know what?
That picture up there is not a Chinese motorcycle gang. It's just ordinary Chinese commuting to work in the smog.
Yes, that's sad, man. And I think those rates are going to continue to go down because they're continuing to get new plants online, and they're continuing to put up wind and solar faster than you can count it.
And they're closing down coal plants.
And they're closing down the coal plants.
So they're serious about what they're doing.
They're serious. That's right. Okay, DigiTimes gave us this. Fueled by policy-driven installation increases in China, Germany, and the U.S., global wind industry had a remarkable comeback in 2014. Other countries contributed, including Brazil, China, and France. Navigant Research says worldwide wind power installations grew by 42% on year in 2014. Big increases, but most of those increases not in the United States. The United States
in
was
Europe,
slower.
most of it's happening offshore.
Most of it's happening offshore, yeah. And this is, we're seeing the change. The next item is similar. Britain's greenhouse gas emissions fell by 8.4% in 2014. 8.4 is a lot. 8.4 is a big chunk.
It's close to 10.
It's close to 10. Due to a decline in fossil fuel power generation, preliminary government data showed on Thursday, the fall largely resulted from a 15% decrease in emissions from energy supply sector as coal-fired generation fell and output from renewable power sources rose. This is from the Sydney Morning Herald, and today, we won't cover this in the news this week, but we will next week. I saw that the coal tax, the equivalent of a coal tax, however they do it in Britain, rose 88% a couple of days ago.
Oh,
they had hit a scheduled, and that's going to change things. And one of the things that they're speculating about is that maybe those coal plants are just going to take the summer off.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens.
You see.
I mean, you don't have a lot of air conditioners in Britain.
Not a lot.
When I lived there, they didn't. Not only didn't they have air conditioners, they didn't have refrigerators.
They didn't even have refrigerators.
No,
wow.
they didn't. So and the house that we lived in Devon, which is right in the southwest corner of Britain. Cornwall is farther to the southwest, but nothing else is. The temperature inside our house never hit 65 degrees all summer.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Below
I can believe
65
that, yeah.
all summer. And what they did was they had pantries, and the pantry had the window open at night, and if necessary, closed during the day. And the pantry had a door, so it would get nice and cool in there.
That's interesting. It's
didn't
an
need a
interesting
refrigerator.
low-tech way of doing things.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that was from Digitimes. Now, our next, oh, I'm sorry, that was from Sydney Morning Herald. Our next item is from The National. Provisional renewable electricity generation in 2014 national statistics showed that 49.6% of all electricity consumption came from renewable sources in Scotland this year, up from 44.4 in 2013. Hydro, bioenergy, and wind generation all increased, with hydro at a record high, up 26% to 5,503 gigawatt hours. This is from The National. And you know what? Today, again, I saw in the news, first 2 months of this year, Scotland got 57% of its electricity from renewable power.
49.6 in this article.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't even quibble about the 4.1%. They're there.
They're getting there. They're getting there fast. They wanted to get to 100% by 2020, and it looks like they're.
I think they will.
I think they will. Yeah,
they're going to do it.
Yeah, I think they will. And finally, from Friday's news, Clean Technica tells us U.S. Energy Information Administration's electricity generation figures for December of 2014 show the country has reached a very interesting milestone that was widely missed in the news at that time. Wind power actually produced more electricity than hydropower for the month as a whole, and this is the first time that has happened in history.
Yeah, they're very close, but
they're very close.
They did it.
Yeah, they did it. And that was both
in certain parts of the country right now, wind is a good bargain.
In much of the country,
yeah,
it is.
Absolutely.
It is actually, yeah, except in the southeast, it's not a good bargain.
No, there's no wind.
There's no wind. But the people in the southeast are starting to get contracts for long-distance transmission that would bring Alabama, one of the utilities in Alabama is getting it from Nebraska, I believe, and one of the utilities in Georgia is now getting it from Kansas.
Well, the northern plains states have a lot of wind.
They have a lot of wind.
They always have.
Yeah.
So this makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. So we are moving into Saturday, March 28th. This was one which I found interesting. 7 Republicans joined all Senate Democrats in voting 53 to 47 for an amendment to tie climate change to national security and call for action to cut carbon pollution and invest in efficiency and renewable power. The vote shows cracks in the wall of Republican opposition to action on climate change. This came from the Huffington Post. And, you know, this is because the Pentagon has been
Bingo.
after.
I was going to say something about exactly that.
Yeah.
The military uses energy. They know what's going on. And they say enough of this politics stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it is very much egg on the face of the Republicans who claim that they are so pro security of the country and such what that they have been denying the climate change, and the military is saying to them, we need to have this get this taken care of, because the military has been saying for a couple of years now that climate change is the biggest security risk the United States faces for the 21st century.
Well, we've discussed exactly that here.
Yeah.
Yeah. The military is well aware.
Yeah. And you've got people like Governor Scott in Florida, who has ordered his people not to use the terms climate change or global warming.
Yeah.
This is you know, we used to hear about.
I'm laughing because it's ridiculously funny.
Politically correct,
yeah.
You know, and the people on the right have been talking about the people on the left resorting to things that are politically correct for a long time. Now they're doing it themselves big time.
Well, here's another example coming up. You're
going
to talk about it.
Right,
It's
Green
just
Tech
happening
Media.
in Georgia.
Yeah. Georgia State Senate unanimously passed legislation. Now, this is both parties, by golly, and anybody else. that would permit, that would allow for third-party ownership of rooftop solar power in the state. The bill had passed with the Georgia House of Representatives, again unanimously, on February 9th, and it now heads to the desk of Republican Governor Nathan Deal. Do you think Governor Deal is going to veto it?
I don't think so.
My guess is that he will not.
He'd be really sticking his neck out if he did, I think.
But you know, it's interesting to see that. Now, third-party ownership means that the panels up there can be owned by a company that is a leasing company.
Exactly. That's what this is all about. Customers can lease the rooftop solar installations, sell the excess power that they generate. And this doesn't say anything about it, but more than likely, pay off the lease on their electric bill.
Right.
Which is about to happen in Vermont right now.
Well,
they're
in
talking about
practical terms, it is happening in Vermont.
You can do it already in some parts of Vermont.
Yeah, and this is happening also in other places. There are other states and other. In fact, we will see one of these soon, and other parts of the country. I think it was a report that I saw from Fort Collins, Colorado, where they were doing something which looked to me like it was influenced by Green Mountain Power and
well,
the experiences they've had there.
They set a standard that people are watching, you know.
Yep. I understand that Mary Powell has a tight-fitting undergarment that if she pulls her shirt off, you see this blue thing with a big S on it.
The bottom line on this thing is it's democratizing rooftop solar.
It sure is.
The little guy who really couldn't afford the cash up front can lease, and it's painless because in some cases he's actually paying less for his electricity.
His electric bill
than
goes
he was,
down.
And he's paying off all of this
right.
stuff.
The cost of
this is a great idea.
Goes on the electric bill, which declines because he's getting paid for the power he generates, and his electric bill goes down. So, okay. Now on here we go. On Sunday, March 29th, Denver Post tells us state utility regulators, including those in Colorado, are increasingly changing how business is done. The century-old business plan for utilities with rates based on investments in big power plants and lines is not working.
Say that sentence again because it's very important.
The century-old business plan for utilities with rates based on investments in big power plants and transmission lines is not working well now. Demand is slowing for increasing energy efficiency and rooftop solar. Mm-hmm. And again, you know, we're going to see effects of this thing.
And this isn't a bad thing at all. I mean,
no. As a matter of fact, you know,
old model helped us well for 100 years.
Yeah,
but it's over.
And you know, it's funny because there's nothing out there more democratic than rooftop solar and things like cooperatively owned solar and wind operations that are based on a community-based, you know, level. And I know people who are willing to say the whole idea of climate change is a fraud that has been brought about by socialists so they can take over power in the world. And they don't explain how these socialists are going to grab power from individuals who have got solar power on their roofs. You know, it is among the most backward thinking things I've ever heard, until you realize that those solar panels on the roofs threaten big business.
Only some of them, though.
Only
people
some.
Who aren't
yeah,
giving up on the old model.
Yeah,
you know, they made money making electricity, selling electricity.
Yeah.
And they don't want to give it up.
Yeah,
but technology is marching on.
It's interesting to note that Koch Industries gets a lot of money from coal and oil, and they supply money to the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing thing that is getting Republicans elected into Congress who will vote their way. And, you know, again, we've talked about socializing the risk, socializing the cost, and privatizing the profits.
That's a good model if you're on the receiving end there.
But by golly, it's a really interesting thing to see that they are the ones who are the purveyors of the information that rooftop solar is socialist. What in the world are they coming to? Okay. So our next item, German utility, energy utility RWE disclosed it is now in talks with an unnamed Gulf investor, and that means Persian Gulf, not Gulf of Mexico.
Correct.
Raising hopes that it could receive fresh funds and emerge from a crisis that saddled it with 31 billion euros of debt. That is $33.6 billion. The 117-year-old German group is desperately looking for ways to reinvent its business model. We were just talking about
exactly
reinventing the business model. This is Gulf Business News. Again, they should be talking to Mary Powell. Mary Powell.
Are.
Yeah, they probably are.
This RWE, that's the biggest utility in Germany, isn't it?
I think E.ON is, and E.ON is at the other end where they're spinning off all their fossil fuel plants and keeping this stuff that's renewable. But
they're a big outfit, no matter what.
RWE is a big outfit, and I believe they're big, like E.ON is worldwide. But again, Mary Powell, for those who don't know, is the CEO of Green Mountain Power, which is where we get our power here in Brattleboro, and she is a very forward-looking person who's establishing a new business plan for the utility that she runs.
That's
so
a good description.
It's interesting to see what she's doing. Superwoman. Okay, our next one comes from Bakken.com. And what do you suppose that has to do with oil? Well, probably a lot.
Bakken shale?
Yeah. Even as the U.S. oil industry slashes investment, pipeline operator Enbridge Energy isn't paring back its record 5-year, $44 billion building program. The company CEO said in an interview that the 50% drop in crude oil prices since June is dire for the industry, but hasn't changed the economics of pipelines. Well,
that's debatable, I would say.
I think so,
they're sitting there with their Ouija board, and this is what it's telling them, but I'm not sure they're right.
I'm not sure they're right, and in fact, I think I might trust the Ouija board more than this. Okay. Now we're up to Monday, and we have from the Press Herald.
Well, this is an interesting one.
This is an interesting one.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'll try to pull up a map here.
Okay. Maine is positioning itself as a player in Arctic politics, which could increase opportunities for Maine's climate researchers and businesses in the advanced materials, construction, marine transportation, and renewable power and logistics sectors. Governor LePage supports taking advantage of climate change.
Well, that map up there shows the Northwest Passage, which is more of a dream than a reality right now. It's starting to open up in the summertime, and there are people who are projecting in a very few years it's going to be open all summer long and eventually all year long.
Right. I would worry about...
when that happens, going from the Atlantic to the Pacific is going to be like cut in half instead of going through the Panama Canal.
Yes, depending upon where you're going, but yes.
Well, still, even, you know,
From Maine to Seattle,
And so Maine's sitting up there in the northeast corner of the U.S., and they're saying, we're in a catbird seat.
Yeah, that's right. Now, interestingly, here we heard Governor LePage supports taking advantage of climate change, and it wasn't all that long ago that he called climate change a scam.
Yeah, so...
these friends of mine who were saying that climate change was a thing that was invented by socialists so they could take the world over. And I'm still kind of stunned by that. I can figure out the chain of money between the purveyors of that information and the source of the money. But I cannot figure out how socialism will benefit from climate change. Oh, man. Okay, now we're back to the Barry Montpelier Times-Argus, which says, for almost 40 years, I didn't realize this company had been in business that long. Northern Power Systems, which is based in Barry, Vermont, has combined quality and innovation in manufacturing of wind turbines. And the company, which recently built the first wind turbine installed in New York City, is now partnering with companies across the globe to increase generation of clean energy. This company has an interesting record, and you think wind turbines are all basically the same, but they aren't. And Northern Power Systems specializes in among other things, making wind turbines that are designed to operate in very hostile conditions.
Like ice.
Like ice, exactly. exactly. And there's a market for that.
Sure there is.
Yeah. So what is that thing that you've got?
That's a globe.
Why don't you put it on the screen so people can see it?
I had it up there.
You did?
Put it up
Okay.
Again. Yeah, it's a globe.
Right.
It's just a globe, but it's
All right.
indicating that this company's going global, which they are.
Which they are. Okay.
Out of Littlebury, Vermont.
Out of Littlebury, Vermont. Is that a one-word, Littlebury?
Like Middlebury, huh?
Yeah, I suppose it is.
This was about their connections with a Brazilian firm that's going to manufacture their turbine design in Brazil.
Really? And use it in the
2.1
Andes.
megawatt, which is not pushing the envelope, but it's still a pretty big turbine.
It's a big turbine. It's a utility scale turbine. A couple
Oh,
of those
absolutely.
things, couple of those, two or three of those would put a pretty hefty dent in the power demands for Brattleboro.
I would say they could probably supply the whole damn town.
Yeah.
Or at least half of it.
Much of the time.
Yeah.
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 They got 11 of these machines already going, connected to the grid in Brazil, and they're moving up from there. It doesn't
be
say how many they're going to have, but they're.
It would be interesting to know where they're putting them, because my understanding of Northern Power Systems was that they put a lot of their turbines into hostile cold environments, or into environments where the wind got very strong.
What are they doing in South Brooklyn?
I don't know. I really don't know. But they
Maybe they're worried about graffiti.
maybe. The turbine in Brooklyn is not very big, but it is interesting that there's a wind
100
turbine.
kilowatt.
100
It's
kilowatt.
not a very big one.
Not huge. It's a bit bigger than you would put in your backyard, though.
Correct.
So should we go on?
Yeah.
Okay, Clean Technica brought us this on Tuesday. A fully grid-connected, first-of-its-kind concentrated...
this is interesting.
This one is really interesting. And I want people to look at that tower and figure out whether it's in fact vertical. Well, it looks to me like it's
Looks a little bit off kilter,
listing
doesn't
a
it?
little bit to the right. Okay. A fully grid-connected, first-of-its-kind concentrated solar photovoltaic power tower was unveiled in Newbridge, Victoria, Australia. Some believe it could reduce the cost of solar-based electricity around the world. The project has an ultra-efficient concentrated photovoltaic receiver and a heliostat collector field.
This is interesting. We've talked about solar thermal.
Yes, and this looks almost like solar
but it's
thermal,
not.
but it's not. Yeah.
These mirrors are all mounted with motors and gimbals to follow the sun,
Right.
aiming everything at that vertical column,
Right.
which has something in there that I don't even know what it is. but
They
it's-
have PVs. It's PVs.
Yeah, but it's a special kind of PV.
It's a special kind of PV that can operate at a really high
Yeah,
temperature
yeah.
and is very, very, very efficient. And the advantage that this thing has over a conventional PV system, tracking system, is that the PVs on the tower are extremely efficient, which means you don't need as much land devoted to the PV systems to get the same amount of power.
I missed it, but how big is this setup here?
Well, I
It's not
saw.
told us
They don't
it's
tell
not
us
in
how
the
tall the tower is. I saw a picture of some men standing at one of those heliostats, and the people who were standing there were about half the height of the heliostat.
It looks about right. Yeah. that
So
looks exactly
I'm going to
right.
guess that tower might be 80 feet tall. Why don't you put it back up and people can see? The tower might be 80 feet tall, and honestly, I do think that tower is leaning to the right, because the horizon there is horizontal, and that thing does not meet the horizon at a right angle.
I bet that tower is leaning toward the mirrors a little bit
Yes,
to get the right angle.
I'll bet it is.
I bet it is.
I hadn't thought of
This is
that.
just a little bit off kilter when I get the picture.
Yes, I'll bet that's what it is. That would make good sense. Right. Okay.
So again, more evidence that there's a lot of bright guys out there working on new ideas, old ideas, and some of them are going to click.
And even some old ideas.
And
might
even
click.
some old ideas. You got it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I was reading about the history of tidal power in Europe. And where do you suppose the first tidal power systems were put up and when? According to the stuff I was reading, which might be correct.
I have no idea.
According to this, the first systems, tidal systems that were power plants were put up for grinding grain, and they were put up in Ireland during the Middle Ages.
Huh, how interesting.
Isn't that something?
They used the tide to grind grain.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Bizarre. Okay. Now our next piece comes from Independent Online, and it says rich nations could provided about 5 times as much in export subsidies for fossil fuel technology as for renewables over a decade. Data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says the figures on export credits are central to a debate on targeting funding ahead of UN climate talks. And we're back to this thing of why are we subsidizing fossil fuel companies?
Because they have the network in place to lobby for it.
Well, part of it is because they did lobby for it a long, long time ago.
When it was useful.
And the laws that were passed did not have termination dates. They were permanent.
Yeah.
By contrast, the renewable subsidies and
they all have time limits.
They have time limits. Yeah. And so we are constantly watching Congress fighting over renewing them. And who is funding not renewing them? That push not to renew them? Well, we're back to the Heritage Foundation.
And the Koch brothers.
And the Koch brothers. And, you know, the stuff that I've seen all says that that's what they're doing. They're not complaining about the subsidies they get themselves.
Of course not.
But they sure are complaining about subsidies that go to anyone else. And the subsidies they get themselves are permanent. And the subsidies that go to other people are not. And you know, again, the guy who complains that climate change is the invention of socialists.
Yeah.
He also says, yeah, but we can't give subsidies. Once they're there, they never go away. Yeah, they never go away for the people who are funding your side. Oh man. Okay. So that was Independent Online. Do we have something there to show people?
Well, there isn't much except for that science. And you want to stop climate change, stop funding it.
Yeah, right. That's what it is.
That's exactly what's going on.
Oh, man. In spades, as they say. Okay, now we're back to Fort Collins, Colorado. Remember I mentioned that earlier in the show.
And it's a new utility business model.
Yes.
We've already talked about
When the new City Council of Fort Collins, Colorado voted to reduce carbon emissions 80% by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050, it seemed the local utility might be doomed. But the utility decided to employ a new integrated utility services model which provides on-bill financing and other services.
Well, on-bill financing, we just mentioned that.
Yes, we did. And this, as I said earlier, I think they probably learned a great deal from Green Mountain Power.
Yeah.
And this report, by the way, is from Green Biz, and we have is that a Venn diagram up there?
It's just really kind of a logo or a efficiency and solar, where they intersect is profit. That's basically what they're saying there. There was a lot of graphics in this article, and I didn't capture all of them.
Yes. Yeah.
Explaining them would have taken too long.
Yes. Well,
but the interesting thing about this particular energy model, they're pushing the future. This is not for immediate development.
Right.
But they're basically thinking of an economy where everything is electrical.
Yes.
All of the electricity is generated by renewables.
Right.
So 50% of the cars are going to have to be, for this model to work, electric.
Right.
Okay, and
they will be.
They're going to have to heat their buildings electrically.
Which will happen.
Which will happen. So everything's going to be electrified, and the electricity is going to come from renewables. And it sounds to me like it's a viable business model for not immediate future, but maybe the next model after that.
Well, you know, the various things that I've seen being developed, it looks like what is happening with the old utility model was you and I get together, we build a power plant, we put in a bunch of transmission lines, and we sell power.
Correct.
And the power that we sell...
That's worked well for 100 years.
Yeah. And the power that we sell is our product. Now, if you can't sell that power anymore, what have you got for a product? Well, the fact of the matter is you've got a lot of know-how.
And an infrastructure.
And you've got an infrastructure. And when Joe is making more power than he needs, but Margaret needs more power than she's making, Joe can sell to Margaret. But if they're not even in the same town, it's going to take some doing to get the power from one to the other. And somebody has got to take care of that grid. Somebody has
Bingo.
got to. And then the grid
and that's where these guys come
right.
in. Because say, hey, guys, you know, we got the grid, we got the technology.
Right. And you know what it reminds me of, Tom, is years and years and years ago, somebody was explaining to me when I was in college the concept of what software was. And I said, software? What is that? That sounds like smoke and mirrors. And so they said, well, you know, the software, think of it this way. The software isn't the book. The software is the information in the book.
Bingo.
And I sat there and I thought, what does that mean? So what did I do? I became a software engineer. And but
I'm going to throw this model up while we're talking.
yeah, but this is kind of like that. It's kind of like we're not going to sell you the electricity. We're going to sell you the access to the world.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
They're
not selling the electricity anymore. They're selling the know-how. Basically.
They're selling you the know-how. They're selling you the control
software.
system. They're selling you the software. There you go.
There you go.
Now, what do you got there?
This is a model of their future utility.
Right.
And in this particular case, the utility is financing and paying. The utility is acting as the major contractor here.
Right.
They're hiring the contractors. The contractors are doing the work. The contractors are satisfying the homeowners. The utility is billing the homeowners, and the investors are investing in the utility. And something's been added because part of these things include tax credits, which is attracting the investors. So it's an interesting concept, and it looks like something like this is what is eventually going to evolve.
Right, and you know, one of the things that I like about this particular paradigm is that it's clear that it has the ability to evolve.
Oh yeah.
And the old paradigm had to be drastically changed to get to this.
We're going to evolve into this.
Yeah.
We're not going to wake up one morning and everybody's going to say this is the way it is.
Yeah.
This is going to be a slow transition.
Yes, it'll happen. And it'll take at least 6 months.
You're going to have a solar panel on your roof, and then a couple of years later, I'll have a solar panel on my roof, and a guy down the street's going to have one, and the guy out in the end of town with a farm, he's going to have maybe a windmill.
Yes.
You know, and maybe somebody in an industrial situation is going to have a little biomass generator.
Right.
These things are just going to happen because they're going to be considered good investments for the individuals at the time.
Right. And you know,
it's going to be tied together in microgrids.
Yeah, and I think that actually there will be other things that will happen within the system too, in addition to electricity, and possibly things like cable TV and you know, there are a bunch of
cable TV, I think, is on its way out.
Well, all of these things, though, the internet, the whole thing, can be tied together.
Oh yeah.
And in addition to that, you know, you look at other things like gas, natural gas. The systems that we've got now, we're going to see increasing amounts of gas being produced, not from fracking fields and not from traditional gas fields, but from waste utilities. Biodigesters, because food waste, 50% of our food is waste. And that can make a lot of methane.
Bingo.
And then we've got municipal waste, and that can make a lot of methane, and farm waste, and that can make a lot of methane. And they're talking
construction waste.
Yeah, they're talking about huge amounts of waste, and instead of filling up landfills, it's going to be used for making methane, which can replace some of our need for natural gas, if that's what we choose to do. We can also use it to burn it to make to make
electricity.
electricity. But in my opinion, the best way to do this would be to put very small power plants in places that can use combined heat and power, so that you're not burning it to make heat, and you're not burning it to make electricity. You're burning it to make both, because
and
you can
less waste.
Yeah.
We're utilizing more of the animal, including his squeal.
Right, and the diesel-powered, gas-powered generators that are made by Jenbacher.
We've talked about them.
those. They're diesels, but they have spark plugs. Those power plants can be used for combined heat and power. And interestingly
And they're
enough,
pretty clean too.
they're very, very clean. But, excuse me, they can get to almost 50% efficiency making electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can capture about 80% of what remains for heat.
Well, they're doing stuff like this in Europe already.
Right, and these Jenbacher engines are available in the United States.
Yep.
But that means that they're running at 90% efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Burning natural gas, sure. They can burn methane from a biodigester.
They don't care where the methane
They don't care where it comes from, and they can burn other gases as well.
Well, again, we're approaching what nature does. There's no waste in nature. And we've been a very wasteful society.
Yeah,
That's over. I mean, people are starting to look and say this is ridiculous.
yeah,
We can't store all of this stuff. We're
Yeah.
running out of space.
Yep.
But we can reutilize it.
right.
Reutilize it? Yeah, I guess that's the right word.
That makes sense. Yep. Okay,
Moving right along.
moving right along. We are up to Wednesday, yesterday. And from Business Green, we learned this. German CO2 emissions fell for the first time in 3 years as the country's high-profile switch to renewable energy takes hold. CO2 emissions dropped by more than 41 million tons, that's metric tons last year, a drop of 4.3%, according to data from Germany's UBA Environment Agency, and a 27% decline from 1990 levels. That's a lot of
That's
decline.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had trouble with this one. Business Green won't let me in.
Oh, really?
Well, they have a deal.
Oh, you know what it is? I figured it out, I think. I should go back and check this. I think that if you, are you about to say they have a deal with Google?
No, Business Green has a deal where you can get free access for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And a month ago, I did that.
Oh.
So I tried to apply again, and they said,
Not going to do it.
You did it already.
Some of these places, one of the things that I found out was if you do a Google search and you go to it from Google using Google's addressing thing,
Yeah.
they'll let you in.
Oh, yeah?
But if once they let you in, the address they put up for the site is a different address than Google used to get you there. And if you use that different address, they
They're
won't
not
let
going
you
to
in.
let you in.
Yeah.
That could be what happened, because I found this by Googling. I didn't use Google, but I found this, and it came up, and they let me in.
Yeah, and what I've done is I have occasionally, if I knew that was happening, gone up and grabbed the URL that Google was going to use, and then put that in the geoharvey.wordpress.com thing, and then people could get into it because they're going in indirectly.
They're going in
Google.
through the back door.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. There are ways.
Well, you know.
Hey, these guys have a right, I guess, to do it.
Yep.
But not till everybody's doing it, they don't have a monopoly on it.
That's true. And the other thing is, the way I look at it is by giving people the address of this thing, I'm providing the people at Business Green the service of showing potential customers that they have that site.
Yeah, what it is they're selling.
Yeah. The next item that we have is from Clean Technica. It says, Siemens has published a study to determine the actual environmental impact of wind energy.
Oh, this is an interesting article.
It
Keep
is.
going.
From manufacturing through construction and operation. It found an offshore wind farm with 80 turbines saved as much CO2 as would be absorbed by a Central European forest of 1,286 square kilometers, or 496 square miles. And
That's 20 miles by 25 miles. That's a big forest.
That's a big forest. And there's more information in the article. I see you've got some stuff that's highlighted.
Yeah, well, it's basically what you said already. There's 80 turbines, and it's equal to 500 square miles.
Yeah.
And they're finding that the land-based wind farms pay off faster than the offshore wind farms.
Right.
Because the offshore wind farms cost more to build.
Yeah, but the payoff.
The payoffs are still quite reasonable. 5 years versus 10 years for offshore.
Yeah, but the environmental payoff for these things is very fast. The amount of energy that it takes to build a wind turbine is paid back by the carbon dioxide it saves in a few months.
Well, they factored all of that into their calculations.
Yeah.
Here. They did. I was just looking at the overall cost.
Oh, yes,
that off
I understand that, yeah.
But yes, what did I say here? Did I include? Yes, this is what they included in their analysis. The materials,
yeah,
production, making the damn things, construction, putting them in place,
yep,
operation, maintenance, dismantling,
yes,
and recycling.
Yes.
All of this is, they were busy.
Yep. Germans are very big in recycling. You buy yourself a new Mercedes and it's going to have used parts in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been there, done that.
Yes,
well, I never
right.
bought a new Mercedes. But.
Yeah. Okay, now we have one that I think you might be interested in, Tom, and that is from Trenchless International.
Yeah, I'm interested in this from several different aspects.
A Scottish project is using horizontal directional drilling to create cable bores to link the offshore site with onshore site with 4 subsea tidal turbines.
There's a picture of one of them up there right now.
Right.
It's an underwater wind turbine.
Right. It's a water turbine that's just hanging in the current.
It's catching the tide as it comes in and out 4 times a day.
Right. And
But this is interesting because you can let cables on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
And they're subjectable, I guess, to damage.
Right.
You can bury them in a trench. But what these guys are doing is horizontally drilling.
Yeah.
And pulling them through a hole.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Never even thought of doing that.
There are animals on the ocean floor that will eat their way through the insulation.
Oh,
on
yeah,
cables.
they're called torpedoes. Yeah, T-O-R-E-D-O. And they're kind of a mollusk, and they will eat their way right through the insulation, or bore their way.
Yeah, bore their way. Yeah. They're looking for a place to live, I think. But this, the one thing that I can't quite figure out, you bring this cable to an underwater turbine. How do you connect them? I mean, my father always said, make sure you're dry before you plug that in, kid.
I would figure that they figured it out.
They have figured it out. Well, somebody, you were talking about always some smart guy out there who figures out how to do something new. Well, this is something new. How do you plug in a high voltage cable when you're sitting in salt water?
Well, I'm sure they do it in a protected environment.
In a protected environment. I have no idea how that is going to happen. Of course, it might be entirely
robotic.
Some
kind of a diving bell,
It might be entirely robotic.
That's a possibility too, but it's still they got to protect them.
They have to protect
from water.
I mean, otherwise they'd have short circuits. Mm-hmm. They've got to protect this just for the sake of getting the electricity out. So anyway,
I'm sure there's underwater termination boxes of some sort.
Yeah, some sort of thing.
Interesting thing about this right now they're only linking 4 turbines.
Yeah.
This is kind of a pilot part of this project. If they're successful, they're going to put. The number says 269 turbines. That's a lot of turbines. 400 megawatts they're looking at.
Wow.
This is going to be a big, if they fully develop it, this is going to be generating.
It's going to be big.
Well, 175,000 homes.
Right. It's going to be very predictable power too. It's going to be power that happens 4 times a day.
The tide comes in, the tide goes out.
Exactly. And you can't, if you were to say, grab a random date in a random month on a random year, you wouldn't know what times the power is going to be generated. But if you're talking about something which is happening tomorrow, you should know exactly when the tides
Well,
are running.
There's all sorts of tables. They got this all.
Oh yeah,
calculated,
absolutely.
You know exactly.
But it means that the grid operator is going to know when that power is going to be available and when it's not.
The grid operators they're going to be able to push a button and they'll know exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Matter of fact, they won't even have to think about it. The machines
will take care of it for them. Okay, our next thing is from Clean Technica, and it says Samsung SDI and ABB are partnering to develop and sell modular, scalable microgrids. We're back to the microgrids, the agreement is for ABB to supply specific solutions for electrification, control optimization, and stabilization, and for Samsung SDI to provide lithium-ion batteries and battery management systems.
There's a picture of one of their batteries up there, and it doesn't look much different from a car battery.
No, it doesn't.
But it is. It's a lithium-ion.
Lithium-ion batteries, which have very good lasting power.
They can be charged and recharged many more times than a car battery.
Yeah.
And they're light.
And they're
not heavy like a car battery.
Yeah.
ABB, I don't know who they are, but according to their website, they're a global leader in power and automation.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a name I see once in a while. I really haven't paid a lot of attention to who they are, but I know that they're big.
So it looks like it's a good partnership. Samsung's going to make the batteries. Mm-hmm. These guys are going to figure out the automation or the connections and stuff like that, and they're going to manage these things. And the article also mentions that it appears to be part of a broader trend.
Well,
and they bring in Solar City, they bring in Musk.
We're talking about the people that we've mentioned earlier in this broadcast.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is
they see
what it is.
What's going on.
They see what's going on.
They say, how can we take advantage of it? And they're doing it in a proper manner. They're not ripping people off.
Right. At least not that we know.
Not that we know of. Well,
we're not,
Musk doesn't seem to be that kind of guy.
No, Elon Musk doesn't. He seems to
do something well. I expect to get paid for it. I'm not going to hit you in the nose with it.
Yeah, his goal, he has said many times, has been to save the world, and I think he's probably telling the truth on that one.
Well, we're doing our share, but he's way ahead of us.
Well, he certainly gets paid more. Okay, and our last item for today is from Hydrogen Fuel News. Researchers from the University of Delaware have found a new catalyst to produce inexpensive hydrogen fuel that could be more attractive to consumers and businesses alike. Fuel cells are notoriously expensive because they're made using platinum-based catalysts. The new catalyst uses copper and titanium.
And they're both reasonably cheap.
They're both reasonably cheap. Copper is expensive.
And meanwhile, there's other people working on nanocarbon to do the same kind of thing.
Right. This is just one approach, and you know, the fuel cells, hydrogen fuel cells, can work by a number of different systems. One of which is to split hydrogen off from hydrocarbons, but another one is to split the hydrogen off from water atoms. And when you have that kind of system, if it's designed to be reversible, you can use it to reverse. So you can put electricity in and get hydrogen out, or you can put hydrogen in and get electricity out, and we're back to
kind of a battery.
A battery, yeah. A rechargeable battery. So this is just another system, another approach to exactly what we've been talking about, of having a way of storing power. And you know, we've talked about different ways. You know, the pumped storage and the railroad car that goes up and down the mountain.
Funny to look at, but
it'll work.
It works.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how efficient it's going to be.
I don't know, but we could run one of those things up to Marlboro every day and bring
it back down.
Yeah.
Run it up at night, bring it down in the morning.
Exactly. Yeah. The thing that would be really good is if we could use the same system for regular transportation. If you're going to put tracks in, you might as well use them for regular transportation.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. All right, we are at the end of our ropes here, but we're also at the end of our hour.
2 minutes to go. Huh?
Well, you know, we've got to cut things in and out, and so I think it's about time to say goodbye, unless you've got something special you want to talk about.
Just the fuel cell thing reminded me of something. It's available now in Japan. You can buy them off the market. You can buy a fuel cell. It's about half the size of a refrigerator.
Okay.
That will generate all the electricity you need for your home.
Okay.
It's got to have fuel coming in, but apparently Japan is well piped in for natural gas.
Right.
So you can.
You can also buy kits to build your own biodigester.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you're that so inclined.
If you're so inclined.
I would say the average homeowner is not
probably not
doing
inclined. Yeah,
like
but
that.
your kitchen waste and your human waste could go into such a thing, along with yard clippings and other things.
Well, you know, that's coming too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're there.
Yeah.
It can be done on a municipal basis. But as I said, I think we're at the end of the day. So I am George Harvey, and this is Tom Fennell, and I will wave too. Other hand, we can wave both hands. And we'll see you again. We work all day, sowing and reaping, we store goods away, so we can be dressed well on the day that we die. We dig and drill and waste what we find, break up the earth.